So we'll talk a little bit about stencils, we'll talk a little bit about texture paste, and I'll share some tips when it comes to working with stencils. One of my favorite things about stencils is just that it creates a whole different level of depth or dimension to a surface. Stencils can be used on anything. It can be used on a card, it can be used on a frame, it can be used on a book, a journal, anything. And having a paste, having something to give it dimension is what's really unique. So Ranger's Texture Paste, what this is a matte finish paste. Meaning when I apply it, it's going to dry white and it's going to dry matte. But this is a paste that is designed to absorb color. It's designed to absorb color the exact same way that paper does. And that's what makes it different, because there are a lot of pastes out there, but when you try to put a water-based dye over there, it acts almost as a resist. You know, it becomes a little bit lighter than the background. Where here you can see you get the exact same saturation. Now from a texture aspect of the paste itself, this has the viscosity of almost like icing. It's very thick, okay? It's got just a really good surface to it. And if I wanted to apply stencil, let's see, what do I want to use? Oh, let's use scribbles. I haven't used that in a while. I think I'll even take that on watercolor paper. I'll put that down, and I'm going to apply the paste, and I'm going to spread this through. So when I go and put it through a stencil, I want to use a palette knife, and I want to press down, and then I also want to scrape off some of the excess. Okay? The reason is I want to put the paste through the stencil, but I want to use the edge to lift some of it off. Because if you spread it over the whole stencil and you lift, you're going to get these peaks that fall over. So by cleaning off, and I'm not going and scraping it really hard or digging it out, I'm just quickly kind of scuffing the surface of that, remove that extra paste, and then you get a really cool, and it's pretty dimensional on there. Some great texture, and we're gonna let that dry. From a drying aspect, drying time, I'm gonna say 10 to 15 minutes on the paste. Can you heat dry it? You could, but if you heat dry the paste, you do have a tendency to get it to puff up a little bit, and I really don't want it to puff up. I want to keep those sharp edges on there, and so that's why I like to do that. Cleaning the stencil, I just lay it in water, wait about a minute or so, take it off and dry it like you just saw me do, and all the paste just floats off, so you don't have to scrub it or do anything, because I'm lazy.
Was it the same thing you did for this?
It's exactly the same. That's how it dries. So you can see that it dries with great detail and great texture, but we're going to ink this, and so you're going to see it's, I'll just set that there. It's inkable property. Now, before I ink these, let's talk about this. These are good. Because in our texture world, we never have too much texture. This is, no, it's not the February color. This is Pick Raspberry, yeah. So this is the transparent texture paste, and the transparent texture paste is going to dry transparent. Now, when it is transparent, it acts as a resist. Okay, so the regular texture paste, matte, absorbs ink, transparent, it's going to resist, and we have it in matte and gloss. The viscosity of this, completely different. So I like to explain that because, again, if you have other paste, their viscosity is pretty much the same, it just is their overall effect. This I wanted to have a slightly different property, meaning instead of having this sharp edge, that ridge to it, I wanted it to look almost like embossing powder or even glossy accents. I wanted it to have that great kind of domed feature. So when you go to work with this, I'll just go ahead and open up glossy just to show you, because that's what I used on these. The viscosity of this is more like mayo. So it's much creamier, much wetter, but when you apply this to a stencil, it's still going to hold its design, but instead of drying with that straight ridge, it's going to actually curve on the edge. So it does give you that domed look. And so this one's already been inked. I'm going to go in and ink this one to show you. When you apply it to a surface, it does go on white and dries crystal clear. Drying time on this one, about 30 minutes. Do you want to heat it? Again, you could, but whenever you heat it, you are going to get little bubbles in there, but that may be your thing. That's my thing. I like it. You don't necessarily have to. But before I ink that, I'll show you one more thing to do with paste. There's a million and one things to do. My goodness. Let's do this. Let's take, holy moly, there's too many choices. I'll take that, 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 I'll take that. Okay. Here let's go in and use Wildflower. I can use this to also emboss with. So I'm going to use regular texture paste. And I'm going to choose regular texture paste because it is going to be a bit stickier for this particular technique. So I'm going to place this down. I'm going to apply this through my stencil. Bring that right off. And you'll kind of get the feel of it when you work with a palette knife. If you haven't worked much with a palette knife, if you've heard myself demo or even Dina, the cheaper the better. This is one of Dina's palette knives that she did with Ranger. It's just kind of a real flexible one, it's springy, and it's much easier to kind of put it on and control versus a metal one, in my opinion. We're going to lift that off. That's just good on its own. Put that in the water, wipe that off. Now when we want to emboss with this, here's what we're going to do. I'll just throw it. I'll throw it in Wendy's bag. Huh. She leaves it down there. Listen, that's what happens. I'm just going to take a piece of scrap paper and I'm going to take embossing powder. I'm going to apply embossing powder over the top of this. This happens to be gold embossing powder. And you can cover as much of this as you want. Here, I want to have a pretty good layer on here. Now, what I like to do then is set this aside to dry. So I don't want to go and heat it at this point because, again, if we go and heat it at this point, it's going to bubble up and that white is going to basically overpower the gold. So that's going to have to dry. It does take a little bit longer because we've covered it in powder, so maybe in about 15-20 minutes it'll be dry and ready to go, but maybe it won't take that long. We'll see. What's nice about it, and I had a sample earlier, I don't, but I did, is that when you heat emboss it, just like if you were going to do embossing on a card, now you get that great enameled look that becomes very bumpy. So the fact that I use gold embossing powder, when I emboss that, it's going to be a beautiful gold kind of enameled look, but it's going to have all the little bumps that embossing powder gives, versus saying, why don't you just use gold embossing paste? You could, but that's going to have that same smooth effect where this is going to give me a lot of texture. Plus, it's something else to do with embossing powders. I mean, you all know if we have embossing powders, you got a lot of embossing powder. That just goes a long way. So the ability to use it is very cool. So we'll talk inking now. Now that we've got all those things, we'll talk inking. All right, let's say we want to ink this one. You can ink with a lot of different colors. I can go in and use my stains, my paints, my ink pads. I can blend a lot of different ways. If you want a very quick way that we can add color, we can spray it. We can add some spray stain to this. So let's go and take some reds. I was even going to throw in a purple just because, but I won't. Yeah, let's do that one. Let's do that one. Let's do that one. And just a little bit of that one. Just because I don't know yet. You know, we'll figure it out as we go. So here I'm just going to go in and spray. Add some color. Yeah, the colors just get good. They just get super yummy. Add a little peacock feather. That's super, super intense. And then we'll add some evergreen to the bottom. All right. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of water just because I want to get a little bit of blend going, but not too much. Now we're going to start drying this. And when I dry this, I'm not too worried about down there. I know it looks a little dark like a bruise, but it'll be good. So as I'm drying this ink, what you have to remember is that the ink that's going on that surface is going to work just like the paper. So if you want some of that ink to come off, just blot this off. But as it dries, you'll notice that our stencil design starts to become less apparent. It starts to almost fade away into our background because it's the same color as our background. And that, to me, is one of the really cool features of this paste. It's like I said, it's taking ink the exact same way. But it also means we can go in and manipulate this. And by that, I mean, even though it's drying, if I wanted to go in and add that effect with water, I can just spritz over that. And how I normally do kind of the spritz and flick where I spritz the water and I lift it off, it's going to lift it off the tag, it's also going to lift it off the paste. So the paste absorbs the color, but the paste is also going to give the color back the same way paper does. Because you would think, oh, if it's that porous, it's not going to give it back, and it does. It could go straight to white. So if you wanted to take a baby wipe, for example, and you took a baby wipe and you wiped over it, the color would lift off. But I could also add different colors, and that's one of the things that I wanted to show you. If I wanted to, I wanted to make some of this a little yellow and a little pink. If I wanted to combine some color, maybe I wanted to take some yellow and I wanted to pull more of that over there. I can go over the top of that and that's just going to turn that color to yellow. Even though it had a lot of red on it, it brightens that up. I can also go back the other way and say, oh, you know what? I really wanted it to have more blue in it. So we can take that. And do the exact same thing and just pull in some blue. I love that. I love that we can add, we can take away, and then you go, oh, you know what? Now I think it's a little too dark. Now I want to add more water to it, and I want to lighten that. Same thing. I can do that again and again, because every time you add color, you can get it to drip down, or if I want to, I can completely remove color. Say, you know what, I just would really have it go back to white because I want my words to completely pop over the top. I can do that as well. It's neat. It's nice that I can, I don't have to be stuck with this. I can just play around and say, okay, what do I want? If I wanted to ink it, I could ink over it again. But the paste is fairly resilient. I mean, the fact that we can put color on there and take it away is really cool. And you say, well, what would I do with this? Well, gosh, I'd die cut something. Maybe die cut a heart that has some of the words in there, or use it as a background for an element. But I think it has some really great texture to it, and very, very durable texture at the same time. So, that being said, what happens when we use the transparent? So this one I started just by spraying on picked raspberry. Started out pink, okay? Then I went over it with the transparent gloss, let it dry. Now, anytime I go over with ink, I'm gonna get something completely new, different. So if I wanted to take, let's go in with purple on pink, why not? Shock value. That's what I'm all about. I'm gonna do some shock value. Your design just comes to life because it's a resist. So knowing what you want to do with it, I think, is really important when you're working with it. Isn't that cool? That's just like, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's a great effect. But that undertone, that is protected, but the top layer that I just put on, again, is still going to be reactive. So I love the whole spritzing on there, adding my drops. Completely heat stable, so you don't have to worry about something happening with the paste. And then lifting that off to get that great watercolor effect. Beautiful background, really. And I love just the spray pattern around it. Like I would use that just as the top of a card and then, have some sort of die cut, like die cut a flower in black or something like that. It would be cool. Yeah, but I love the texture of those as well. So definitely give that a feel. See how that is? How's this doing? Let's see. We should do it. It's not ready. Oh, we should do it. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I'm gonna see if Wendy's got her pink pig thing. Something wrong with her bag. Contraband. We want to emboss. When I want to emboss, this is a great heat tool for ink and paint and mixed media. It's like there's nothing better because it doesn't blow things around. But when I want to melt powder quickly, the fact that this diffuses heat kind of defeats the purpose. I need something that's going to focus heat. So switching to an embossing. Because an embossing gun is going to direct my heat, and that's what we want to do. If you see anyone from Ranger running over here, let me know. I'll put it away. Yeah. The paste isn't ready, but see how it bubbles? Ooh, gosh, it's so good.
Someone from Ranger.
I'm good, Al. Thanks. See, they hear it. It's like an alarm.
You still there?
Do you see the flour? Do you see how it puffs up when it heats up? Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
That's because the paste wasn't done. But like I said, it's not a bad thing. It's just different. See that? Ooh, you get a lot of texture. Yeah, it becomes molten. That's just good. That's just good. So now you have this super thick, beautifully enameled stencil design that you can ink, you can spray, you can do whatever you want over this, because this, of course, is completely set. Yeah, because it's been embossed. But I love that. Yeah, this has some really good bumpy texture in there. I think the paste is still wet underneath, which is really cool. Yeah, it's great. You want to see it? You can ink over it or whatever. Isn't that great?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I know when you feel it, it's very cool. I do. I like working with that. Especially, like I said, we have so many different kind of powders. We use glitter powder, or metallic powders, or clear powders, or ultra thick powders, or anything like that, and ink over it. Yeah, it's far more texture than you imagine it to be, than just plain embossing. And then it would still resist at the same time. It's beautiful. So that's just giving ideas, different ways to use something that people think, oh, it's just paste. It's like, you're right, it's paste, but let me show you paste with ink. Let me show you paste if we do it transparent and we've inked first. If this was a pattern paper, let's say it was book paper or scrapbook paper, and you do a pattern over the top and ink it, you get a really great effect over it. You do. Because it's one of those things that they look and they wonder, especially if you use something bold, like if you use this, the splotches, you know, that's going to have really big dramatic elements. If I did splotches over, you know, printed paper, book paper, it would be very cool. Because splotches has some very large elements, really large elements.
Oh, splotches is the name of the stencil?
Yes, because it's not really circles. It may look like it, but no.
The distressed.
They're big splotches. Yeah. Ted really loves cutting this stencil. He's like, you couldn't just give me a straight line. I'm like, nope. That's predictable. Yeah. Splotches has a really different edge to them.
That's pretty, actually. It's like planets.
Then I'll just go in and kind of fade those out on the edge. Yeah. So you can see the edges have all the little
really
gouges and jags. I like it. I like it. Because I like circles, but, you know, I'm not very geometric, you know, I don't want perfect bubble shapes, but I do like some circles on that. See? Great background.
That's really cool.
Great background. Emboss over that if you want.